Okay, so in this video, we're going to start looking at the investigation type questions. This investigation is going to be a parabola, but that's only because I know from the format of this that it's going to be a parabola. If you're not going to spot that, then that's fine. You just need to start something. So it's telling me that there is a piece of plastic that is 12 centimeters long. And they cut the piece of plastic into two pieces, and then they use those two pieces to make a right angle triangle. So he cuts a piece 4 centimeters long from the 8 centimeter strip, which means the last bit must be 8 centimeters because 8 plus 4 makes 12. And they've used that to make a right angle triangle. Right, now comes the important bit. They may write it like this or they may not. They may just tell you to investigate. Use a table, equation, or graph to investigate the relationship between the area of the triangle and the length of the piece of the plastic. So I need to be able to work out the area of the triangle. So area equals base times height divided by 2. And that, let's be honest, should be something that you can do. So I suppose these questions do look a bit daunting, because if you're not sure what to do, you don't know where to start. But I really want to stress, just do something. If you do something, the likelihood is you will get enough to get achieved. Just work out the area of a triangle that's got two sides that add up to make 12, and the logical one to do is the 4 and the 8. That would be a start. So if I have base is 4, height is 8, area is going to be 4 times 8, which is 32, divided by 2, which is 16. And I'm just going to put the units on because I better be careful. Now, if you did one that was 4 and 8, you could choose another number, which would be your next go. Let's do a base of 5. And if the base is 5, the height has got to be 7 because 5 plus 7 has to equal 12. And 5 times 7 divided by 2 is 35 divided by 2, which is 17.5. Okay, if I look at how I'm writing this, it clearly looks like this might be sensible to convert into a table. But if I was to do this and I was actually doing an investigation, I would probably go, right, the logical thing to do would start from 0, so therefore the height is 12 and the area is 0. Or maybe writing all these centimeters squared at the bottom here isn't a very sensible way of going. So let's just rub that out a second and write cm squared up there. And now I could keep going through, and the logical thing will be to change my base by 1. And if I change my base by 1, then I know my height is going to be 12 minus my base, which is 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Now I've stopped my table at 8 because I'm noticing something. I did 4 and 8, and now I've got 8 and 4. and they're both going to give me an area of 16 because I've worked that out before. I've also got an area of 5 and 7, and that gives me an area of 17.5, and that one's been repeated. So therefore, I'm fairly confident that my graph is going to be a N or a U because it's symmetrical. The numbers repeat. So I don't need to go from 8 to 12 because I've already gone from 8 to 12 over here, and those answers are going to be the same. Right, so now notice how I've rewritten out my numbers even though they were at the top because I want my table to be sequential. Now I'm going to work these out. So 11 times 1 is 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. 2 times 10 is 20 divided by 2 is 10. 3 times 9 is 27 divided by 2 is 13.5. And 6 times 6 is 36 divided by 2 is 18. So if I was looking at this, tick, I've done it as a table. That's a start. Now let's go to my graph. Now I'm using GeoGebra because I've needed a way of presenting this, and as you can see, I've typed in all the coordinates that I had so far. And there's my graph. Now, if I wanted to, I could now carry on plotting all the other points all the way down to 12 because it's got to get to 12. And there's my parabola. And I can see that if I was doing it in the factorized form, because hopefully you looked at that video before coming here, you can see it's got intercepts of 0 and 12. And I could work out the equation of that from there. Or I could use the completed square form and use the vertex, which is this coordinate, which is at 6, 18. And again, I'm going to be able to find that equation. So now I've got a table and a graph. I would probably now want to go and find the equation, which I could find now I've got my graph. And then I would write some kind of sentence because it says investigate the relationship between the area of the triangle and different lengths. So what I've discovered is as the area increases, as the size of the lengths gets closer to 6, with the maximum area being when one of the sides is 6 and the other side is 6. That gives me the largest area of the triangle. And I can come to that conclusion from my table or from my graph. And then I've finished this question. So let's just choose one method of finding this equation because I'd like to get that equation to finish to show you that you could get that. So using my graph, I'm going to use the vertex, which has a coordinate of 6, 18. And I've got to find another coordinate, so I'm going to use 2, 10, but I could use any other coordinate. And that's going to help me to find the stretch value. So my equation is y equals a x minus 6 squared plus 18. Now, I know, and I'm sure those of you who are following this are quite good with these graphs, you know that that's a sad face, that's an n, so therefore we know it's going to be a negative quadratic, but I'm not worried about that because that's all covering out in my a. So I'm now going to use my coordinate that I worked out earlier. So I'm going to say 10 equals a, 2 minus 6 squared plus 18. And exactly the same as I did last time, I'm going to go minus 18 minus 18. And that's going to give me minus 8 equals, right, 2 minus 6 is minus 4. But if I square a minus number, it becomes a positive. So minus 4 squared is 16a. So a equals minus 8 divided by 16, which equals minus a half. So my equation becomes y equals minus a half x minus 6 squared plus 18. Okay, is everyone happy with that? Now let me just think about my table that I had. This was my number that I was changing, so I'm going to make that my x. To get this number, each time I had to go 12 minus x. And to get this equation, I had to go x times 12 minus x divided by 2. So that will be a different way of writing the equation. So I could write it as a half x 12 minus x, or I could write it as y equals x 12 minus x divided by 2, and that would be the factorized form if I'd chosen to find my equation from that way. But none of this changes the fact that in my situation, when I did my investigation, as my number got closer to 6, the area got bigger, and as it got further away from 6, the area got smaller. Or as it got closer to these two numbers being the same, I got the largest area. So that was how to approach one of these questions. If they don't tell you to use a table, equation, or graph, use a table, equation, or graph. There's a reason why the standard is called tables, equations, and graphs. So if it doesn't tell you to use one of them, use it anyway, because it makes sense in the standard. It shows that you understand the relationship between these different things. So I've got a table, I've got a graph, and I've got the equation. Okay, so until next time, keep going and good luck.